I'd like to call this meeting for the City of Post Falls Park and Recreation Commission on January 23rd, 2018 in order. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome. Can we do a roll call of commissioners, please?
Martinez?
Aye.
Gould?
Aye.
Hale?
Aye.
Cornwell?
Aye.
Gorley?
Aye.
And Nordum?
Aye.
And Noska?
Okay, and I will need a motion to approve the minutes from November 28th, 2017, for New Year. Anyone?
Motion to approve the minutes of November 28th, 2017.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Roll call.
Martinez?
Aye.
Gould?
Abstain.
Hale?
Abstain.
Cornwell?
Aye.
Gorley?
Aye.
Sorry about that.
Nordum?
Aye.
Okay, we have no ceremony appointments, announcements, or presentations this evening. And does anyone have amendments to the agenda? Okay, any declaration of conflict? Unfinished and old business, neighborhood park development updates.
Good evening. I just wanted to give you, I guess, a quick update on two of the neighborhood projects we have going on. It may be winter, but planning's still happening on those. Currently, there are two that are underway with partnerships with the developers, and that would be the Tullamore Park and then the Crown Point Park. We also have two other ones that are down the road that we have agreements with, would be in the Montrose, and it is our hope that after that, pretty much all developments will be handled in-house. They'll be dedicated to the city, and then we will do the development per your folks' recommendation. But we do have these four. The Montrose, I still don't know when that timeline will be, but two that are current. And it's those two that I want to give you an update on. The first one, Crown Point, on that park, the design is done, as you're aware. The areas of responsibility have been defined and agreed upon. The developer has begun construction on their required areas. A challenge that came up this last fall is that we did not see the irrigation plan prior to them installing an irrigation. And then they also received a construction permit from the city for the picnic shelter before we had reviewed that design. We have met with the developer on it. We'll be meeting again this week, continuing to find resolution on that. The irrigation does have to be put into the city standard. They do have an opportunity to ask for variances, but we need to review those beforehand. So we've had others look at it. We've looked at it to see if the irrigation works. There are some things that would need to be changed. There are some things in city design that we just, it has to be there. So we're working on that. I know the developer would like to get moving on this project and their other phases of their development as soon as the weather breaks, but obviously that's an issue that we're dealing through. The overall work performed by that developer, or the additional work on the overall park, they've got to complete the irrigation. That means it has to come to a level that we're willing to accept. They need to add topsoil to the site. They need to finish the grade and do the ground preparation. And then, of course, seeding of the site. On the playground area, the access curbing wasn't installed, and then the removal of dirt down to the design grade so that we can put in a playground. picnic shelter needs to be constructed. And then in the parking area, there has to be a correction to the ADA site or the ADA pad. So those are things that we're working through.
Do you see any difficulty in reaching those standards that we're looking for? I mean, you're just working through, you said?
We just have to work through it.
Okay.
Luckily, once again, we're going to be meeting again with more of the, with the developer staff, and I think two of the partners. You know, it's kind of like, it said it had to be approved by the city on the picnic shelter. They applied for a permit. For whatever reason, it didn't come back to us.
So
Did
we're
they meet
just
the letter
putting
of the law? Yes.
Are we putting it back into that?
Yeah, so
Order.
that's some of the things we're dealing with. We're hoping that we can talk to them a little bit about that and try and get the design to fit more in with what we want for the theme. On that same note, we cannot do any work until after the site is accepted by the city, which means they have to finish all their work. It has to meet what we would consider an acceptable standard.
Dave,
Yes.
is there anybody from the Parks Department that is working with the developer on these designs and stuff like that and kind of walking through with them at the
Yes.
time?
Yes. We actually have gone through, they received our full irrigation specs. It just didn't make it to their staff. That was a breakdown on their side. So staff has spent a lot of time on this, working with their architects, working with their engineers, their staff, communicating back and forth, and
'Cause it
not
seems
just
like-
our staff, but also planning and zoning, the building inspectors and stuff, so.
Well, it just seems like the design of the gazebo or picnic shelter, if we're working with them, we should know what the design is even before it gets to get a permit. What happened there?
Well, it was supposed to be designed, on the plans it said, designed to be reviewed and approved by the city. So,
And we didn't get a chance to
we didn't
review
see it.
Right. They just went straight to
That
staff.
one was, and we've worked internally to correct that. Did they meet the letter of the law? Yes. Was it the intent? No. So it just tells us that we tighten it up even more. And those are things we've looked internally. And that's a much more minor thing to us than the irrigation. Even though you can't see it, it's underground. The type of pipe, the system will affect its life expectancy. We're not here, for just a few years. We're here for the long term. That means things have to be put in correctly. We don't want to have to do a major renovation of a system, just as trees and other plants are becoming mature. So we are looking through, and we're trying to get more information so we can make a good assessment. We will assume that was done in good faith at this point, and we'll look at what they've done and what can we accept and what we can't. So I want you to be aware that it's delaying things. Once we have accepted that park, we're probably about 9 months out from completion to a year on our side. Figure it takes about a year to do the parks. So that's just where it's at. What we have done at this point is we've ordered a playground for it, and so that we'll have a piece of equipment that's within our budget and ready for the summer install. It's not that you go off a shelf and just grab them. They're not. They actually build them after they're ordered. Also, we paid the developer to install the basketball court. They offered us a price that was very good. They had their crews mobilized doing the roads and stuff, so it just made a lot of sense. So those two things have happened. On Tullamore Park, that design is done. The developer's areas of responsibility are completed. The original timeline was for us to begin work last July. As you're aware, we got a land and water grant for $210,000. There was a delay until the end of the summer on the federal side. that delay has continued.
What do we have? 8 years in that?
Oh, more than that.
10?
In Tullamore.
Long time.
For Tullamore. But the grant is
Long as I
still
can
something we
remember.
expected to start in July. Department of Agriculture, or Department of Interior, obviously with change of administration, new secretary, they added a few rules and changes. One of them is one person reviews all grants coming out of that agency. That's a lot of grants for one person to review. So it slowed that down. Number two, new staff in the Forest Service. It appears that for the Northwest, they missed a deadline, which has caused a hiccup with the Department of Interior saying, sorry, the money's gone. State is going back and saying, we'd met all the timelines, we did it right, you guys made the mistake, you need to make us whole. Then we got into the healthcare bill, and all Northwest grants were put on hold until after that vote. They were released after the vote, I think all except for Alaska. There's other issues. I know the state has now contacted or is contacting our congressman to try and get a political push on this. We also have asked for, I got to look this up, okay, a pre-award. The state has worked hard on this. They found a thing in the rules and regulations for a pre-award. And what that means is that costs that we're putting up forward in Land and Water, you don't get credit for what you've already done, but they can authorize a pre-award, which would give us credit. That's where we're worried,
Makes sense.
is we have had to do work. We've had to put in or pave the trails. They were graded, and all the compaction went in and all the gravel. We didn't want to lose it during the winter, so we paid, close to $50,000 to have it paved.
Can't count it.
You got to do it. We know that we're going to have to go back in and do some weed control. We're probably going to have to do some more grading, just depending on the winter. So those things we don't get credit for. By doing this, we've put in quite a few items asking for it, haven't heard back, but we put a deadline of March 1st, kind of in our minds as as our drop dead date. Obviously, weather will play a part in that for when we have to start construction. We've also paid for the utility stubs and connections, so sewers to where the restrooms will be. Once again, we've selected and ordered the playground. This was a bigger piece, so it was going to take even longer, so we did that last fall. And we're currently working on designs for the picnic shelter and restroom to get that through. Once again, once this is done, we're looking at 9 months to a year. And then the big question I was asked today by the Homeowners Association, well, if you don't get the grant, what does it really affect? Well, some of the quality will go down. We have to cut some areas. We may not put in as many amenities. Pickleball court may not go in. Some benches may not go in. The biggest issue is we will not be able to subcontract out some areas, which means it will take longer. We will have to do it in-house. So we got 2 projects. Each one has its little quirks based on things, but we're working through them. But I wanted you guys to be aware, just if there are delays or you hear things, that's really what's happening.
Thank you.
It takes a lot of staff time that's never seen.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any additional questions? Thank you, Dave. We're going to move on to citizen issues. Were there any citizen issues this evening? Okay. New business. Department changes and growth. This will be exciting to hear.
There's been a few. Did you want to speak before I go? Yeah. We have had a lot of growth. I think in my memo we're going to just talk about last year's growth and changes. The reality is it's about a 3-year period. And when you look at and I'm sorry to the folks at home, and even to you guys, that's hard to see. But that's Post Falls. The changes we've had really have hit about a 3-year period. And when you look at, I think, department growth or anything, I always think of it in plateaus. You have an area where you're just kind of going along, don't say much, and then you see a jump up. And then it goes along, goes up. Well, we've been doing that, and now we went way up. The growth wasn't just in land, but I'm going to focus on land, but I want you to know, and the changes weren't just on Parkside. Over the last 3 years, and that's what I'm going to concentrate on, we have revamped our department from the park side, bringing things, bringing in a manager, bringing things under that manager's control, so we had better communication, better utilization of staff. This last year, we kind of did the same thing with the recreation side. It's always done when we have changes in staff, either retirements of long-term people that have gone away, to go out for new jobs, whatever. You have that opportunity, and we've taken advantage of it, and we've seen some really good things come from it. We've seen a lot more cross-communication. We've been able to, as I said, utilize staff better. Later on this year, we'll bring you the park matrix information. Hopefully this time we've got everything dialed down and you get a really nice looking booklet that we can use on it. But for now, I'm going to look at just the park side of it, the land growth, not even the park side, the land growth. I think it's pretty amazing when you look at that. I know this is hard to see, but the other map that highlights it even better is it worse to see. But the green, the dark green is like in here, there. That is the parkland. The hashed areas are some of the city's properties that are shared with wastewater. I see a couple in there that were marked in hash 2 that are actually ours that we purchased, but those are minor things. This will make it just slightly easier. So that's kind of, you can see the dots and everything else. It does include school lands and some of the private property, but I'm going to reach around and grab the pen. So when you look at the areas circled in red, those are new parks or parklands. Those are new acquisitions. To give you an idea, I'm going to work backwards on this, but we picked up an MOU for Trailer Park Wave from Avista. We've included that. It's only a 10-year MOU, and usually we try to keep it at a 30-year plus. But with Avista, that's part of the relicensing process. It's not going away. It will be there for the public. We may not manage it. Kootenai County could take it over. Avista could hire it out, but it will be there for the public. So we feel comfortable that including that simply because it is there for the public for as long as we can foresee. It's not going to change on the FERC mandate. So that was 2015. 2016, the city received Tullamore Park right here, and they picked up the Lost Mines property, which is right in here. So that was 248 acres of land. Then you get to last year, and I'm not going to add it up because there's too many numbers there, but it's probably another close to 200 acres. Okay. We had the May property, which is circled here. Crown Point, which is up in here. That was 4.18 acres. May property was 127 acres. We purchased Cecil Road right here, 3.2 acres. We finalized the deal in exchange and purchase with the sports complex, 25.5 acres. Did a Centennial Trail extension in here, and that took it from Lincoln Street to the gardens. Black Bay, there was 2 of them, 1.49 acre that the water department did. Gotta find Black Bag in. So it's kind of in here. And then right next to it was the trade we did with Steve Shamian, which gave us a net of just over 5 acres. So we gave up a half-acre lot and then picked up the 5 acres, which provided access out there. So, I don't know. I said it was close to 200. No, it's
66.
Thank you. I knew somebody would be adding it up. But when you look at that 166 plus another 248 and then small, that's over 400 acres of land in a short period of time. Now, it's been a long time working on it. As Rick was saying, it's 8-10 years on Tullamore, the May property, Lost Mines, all of that. We've been looking at that for 20-some years, trying to figure out ways to do it. Centennial Trail's been going on since the late 80s. So some of these things take a really long time, and you have to wait for opportunity. Other things happen fairly quickly. Cecil property, driving by one day and saw the sign go out. Looked it up, saw the price, was able to get to council pretty quickly, got their blessing so we could go approach it, and that took care of that gap. But as you can see, that's a lot of growth, a lot of land. Later on in our discussion, we're going to talk about levels of service. That's critical when you look at it's just a different look of this whole area in here. So that's the 2 properties we picked up. When you look at how it connects to Corbin Park, to the Crutch property, to Camelin Park, possibly Avista Islands, that's over 500 acres of land in there. That dramatically changes our level 2 service. It skews it. And that's one of the things we need to discuss, because we knew this day would come. But, so we knew it was going to come. We have some ideas on how to do that. But as you can see, that's a big jump, and I'm not sure that we're going to hit the plateau yet. I think we're still climbing for the next probably year or so, and then we have to start planning again.
So
One of
Dave,
our, yes,
Next month, is it a workshop?
yes.
And we had a workshop where we discussed the level of services and possibly creating a 3rd level, like a,
That's what I would like, but,
are we
and
going
that's,
to be able to look at that again at our workshop next month? Or
yes.
Okay, perfect.
I'm going to talk a little bit about it so that you can be thinking about it.
Okay.
Because I figure if we can come in where everybody's been kind of thinking and let it marinate a little bit and seeing what your comfort levels are, we'll be more effective on that.
Thank you.
So just before I finish on that, just so you know, we've taken care of this side pretty good. The east side is, there's a piece right in here that's supposed to come in the future. That's with the foxtail. Here's Montrose. We know where one of them's going to be, and the other one's kind of in that area. So we do pretty good here. We have to add up in here. It'd be nice to pick up one more piece in that Pine Villa area, but that might go with, is it LP? Potlatch. Thank you. I knew it was an LP, and it's been a while since I had coffee, okay? But when that finally goes away and then you got that, we really need to look at that. Maybe then we have our, I don't want to call it adventure park, but the high activity where we have a skate park. Maybe we can add BMX in there. Maybe there's a ropes course. Maybe there's whatever. That's where you have a change in the use there. Maybe it is a neighborhood on the other side servicing more towards a lot of those apartments down there. So those are things we'll look at. Trails. The Prairie Trail off from Coeur d'Alene, we need to connect in there. Ultimately, this spur will probably go away, and that's why we're really looking at centering those parks in there. It'd be nice to get something out here. Mm-hmm. The area that's going to be a challenge for us in the future is going this direction. Part of that is a lot of these are 5-acre lots, smaller lot of, it's in the county, it's already established, so it means we have to pick up some of those, and they may be even less than 5 acres, some of them are, and piecing them together. Then you've, of course, got in here with between the freeway and Celtice, once again, a little bit harder. So we have to look at connectivity, or how do we put in a few mini parks? As much as it's not what we want to do, there are areas where we have to do that. So as we're planning in the future, you will see us looking in this direction. I'm open for any questions on change or growth on that side, but I think it's fairly substantial. We just about doubled our size in a short period of time on paper. Functionality isn't quite the same, and that's where we talk about those levels of service.
Any other questions? Anybody?
Good job.
It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, good job.
Significant.
Yeah, it is exciting. Yes. As I think I told you guys once, we probably work on about 30 projects before one actually happens. Maybe it's even sometimes 40. There's a lot of times we meet with landowners. I get calls a lot from people that have land they want to sell to the city. We just don't have as much money as they think we do. We like to look at connectivity. What happened with Black Bay is a great thing where we can expand on that. We've done that with Corbin Park. We're doing that with Camelin Park, and actually Camille and Corbin now. Yeah. That's a good thing. There are some areas where we'd like to expand on those parks, and we just can't do it, but we look at all that. So yeah, we're excited to see some of those 30 or 40 projects actually come to fruition. So.
Thank you. Under new business, we have land calculations in our planning model.
Okay, I'm going to take a quick sip of water. And I'll go back to the podium, maybe, just. Yeah. Okay. So, I know this doesn't show up at probably real well, but you can see the yellow, and that's what I wanted to highlight. The large tract, I already pointed out in here, but this one also shows the land application property on the prairie. In there, Rathdrum has some. I know the plan shows that we have to purchase more, but what happens, this is probably a little better on the eyes, and it's just showing the lower area, so it kind of gives you an idea of what's out there. The city's level of service, it's 16 acres per 1,000 population. And we've been pushed that that's a lot of land that we're requiring.
Is that upside down?
No. Yes. Maybe. Does that look better?
I'm just, no,
Yeah.
making sure I'm,
Yeah. There was a shift in the world, and
Get an orientation.
so yes, it's south, north. And really that's to highlight what we have there. But as we have it, the best way to look at it is our level of service is 6 acres of parkland per 1,000. And that puts us closer to what you see as a common thing. We also then have 10 acres of level 2. Level 1 is an active parkland. Could be active facilities that are representing a more developed park, such as a neighborhood, a sports complex, sports fields, courts, picnic areas. The level 2 is more passive. That includes elements such as open space, future parkland, and then trails. Of course, when we get into some of the discussions with the development community and just even on the planning side with the city planners, they want that dialed down a little bit more so there's not any miscommunication on it. What is open space? From our definition, it's far different from a planning definition. So we've tried to nail it down a little bit more. Active recreation areas are those that provide high to moderate intensity of recreational activities which emphasize intensive development. And how we've really looked at our calculations, because we have parks, Black Bay is a great example, it has level 2 and level 1. And it's where is infrastructure in the irrigation, the turf, the mowing, whether it's irrigated or non-irrigated, trees. Where do we spend a bulk of our maintenance dollars? So that's really your active. Level 2, it's not going to cost us as much to maintain. It truly is a buffer. We have said open space in the past, and that's where we get into a challenge. I'm going to share something with you. This is old, so if anybody has spent time in Coeur d'Alene, don't say anything. It's old. It's 2005, and I've got other sheets. And I don't know if you can really see it as well as I'd like you to, but let's see if I can zoom it in just a hair. What I'm thinking. Okay. So you don't have to look and see what it's at. And this was through the Northwest. So there's Oregon in there, there's Washington, there's Idaho, and I think that's where I left it. I didn't look at Alaska, I didn't look to Montana. But this is when we were doing one of our last, well, not last, probably the second to last time of impact fees and justification. You can see park acreages that places have. You can see what their set level of service is, and then what their actual acreage is for that. And we have some, there's, 4 to 1, none, 4 to 1, none, 16, 1.5, none. This one had a split one. They had a 6.3 plus a PUD level of service, 20 to 1. The next page ranged kind of from there. Several had none, some had a little bit larger. And I guess what I'm trying to highlight there is not a set standard in our profession. A lot of people look at the National Recreation and Park Association having set a standard of 10 acres per 1,000. It's what I first learned. Well, when I was part of the NRPA's task force, when they're doing reorganization, they gave us a book called Something of Change. It wasn't the Wind of Change, but anyhow, the method of change, the model of change. But it talked about the history of the National Park Service. And before we met on this, we were supposed to read it. I actually did read it. It was interesting to see that whole development. But they talked about a chapter in there for each decade of the association and what they kind of were their guiding principles. Back in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, they were working on this, trying to set a national standard because everybody kept demanding, what is it? How many, what is supposed to be right? The actual verbiage from that was 10 acres of a level 1, what we call a level 1 park, and 10 acres of a level 2. Most people just picked up and geared in on level 1 because it's very hard to identify that larger parcel. And if you look back in some of the stuff, you'll see places that have some really big parkland. It might have been a former federal piece of property, a BLM piece of property. It could have been a military base, all kinds of things. It could have been, when I was in Skagit County, we had Northern State recreation area. That was one of the old mental hospitals. We'd gotten half of it. You had Eastern State, Western State, and Northern State, and each one had a different function. It's a big chunk of land. So what most places have done is they just don't calculate it. or a few included into their thing, but it's really, you're talking about some really different aspects. The other thing with what we found around the nation on, I'm going to use level 2 land, is it's land that can't be developed. Maybe it's a rock formation, it's treaty rock, it's some afford rock. It really doesn't lend itself to being highly developed, or you take away that characteristic. It could be lake frontage. Once again, you have the beach there, but you get some of the other stuff that goes around with it. So what you have is a system that's all over the board. Some places just have chosen not to put any level of service. National Park Service does through the SCORP plan, but the National Recreation and Park Association says set a level of service. They've also refined it to saying set it so it fits your community. Here's a model to use, which is what we've used. Here's a methodology. But each area has to determine itself. That's just how it goes. An example, we're going to take Coeur d'Alene and us. Coeur d'Alene has a huge piece of open space that they don't calculate. And there's really no way to calculate it. You have a lake. They're not going to build houses on that lake. They're not going to build apartment buildings. You might get a few houseboats, but for the reality is they have a huge section of their city that is open space and will stay there forever. We're a little different. We have prairie, but we're seeing that being developed. If you look at Boise, they had a big issue in the last probably 15 years where the foothills were starting to be developed. They put forward a bond to buy the foothills because that was their lake. That was their view shed, and they didn't want it developed. In some ways, that's what we have with this land and this land. They are going to service a function of providing water application for the wastewater site. They're going to serve a function to be recreational amenities for our citizens. But they're also part of that view corridor. And that's that open space, but it doesn't fit a level 2. So, as I said, we knew this day would come. It's a good thing. We're going to have to look at a third category. I don't want to just ignore it. We have had a system in place that has worked very well. We've gone through a lot of growth, and we've maintained it. We've met that standard. You know, when we first started working on it, we had almost 32 acres of land per 1,000. By the time the impact fees came in to play in 97, we had set our standards in 96, and in 97 they were approved and adopted. And that coincided with the state allowing for the impact fee collection. We were down to 18 acres per 1,000. That's a big change. And in that whole bit of negotiation, the area, we settled at the 16 acres because we did not want to be deficient. We wanted to maintain that snapshot of Post Falls. Some places don't get to do that. One of the numbers that was up there was from Spokane Valley. They took it over from the county. They were at a deficit if they chose to do 10 acres per 1,000 or 6 acres per 1,000. I think they're actually doing, I lied to you. I didn't put them up. That was the second page. But they're at a deficit. They're at, I wanted to say it was like 1.7 acres per 1,000. So you have to spend a lot of money to bring it up or not. Spokane was at 18 acres per 1,000, don't know what they're at. Mount Lake Terrace, where I started out, they were landlocked. They haven't gained any land in 30-some years to speak of. There's been an acre here, acre there. There's no land. So their level of service can only go down, or you have to spend a lot of money, which they don't have, to buy it. So we're really fortunate. We've been able to go with the growth and stuff, but I think to keep in mind that part of level 2 is to provide future level 1. We have to look at how we address that, and to have a large section like that is quite unique. So that's where we need to do a level 3. The level 3 will not be, well, I shouldn't say will not. It should not be used in the calculations. We simply recognize we have a very unique feature. Just like Coeur d'Alene has a lake, we have a prairie. We have this national forest-like area that we've been able to obtain, and there may be more land we can add to it. That river is a very unique facility. I don't know if we call that a public preserve. Warren probably won't like me saying that. He doesn't like that term. A public reserve. We'll find a term for it, but there shouldn't be a number put behind what that is. At some point, our citizens may want to see looking at a foothills initiative, just like Boise did, because we're going to see more and more houses going into the hillside. If you add sewer and water across the way, if you add a bridge, a second bridge there, you're going to see higher development. It's easier access. At that point, it changes. So if we have a number that we're putting in something like that, we've kind of limited ourselves. Or we put a number that's just not maintainable. So I think there are unique features that you just have to accept that that's what we'd like to get it when it's available. It adds to the quality of our life. But and we'll bring that back at the workshop, but think about terms, think about how that structure is done. If you agree if there should be a calculation or not, that's simply my opinion. But when I look at all the other places, I don't want to say none. I think we keep our level 1 and 2, and we recognize that there's a third category out there that has a benefit and value to us. So I'm open to any questions or thoughts.
Do you see trails and connecting into that potentially third type of park?
We have that in our level 2,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's where it still fits. You know, one of the conversations we have to have is, we have listed Camillin Park, part of that, as level 2, and the Crutch property. But now that it's part of this bigger package, does that get pulled out? Or how do we do that? Because that, once again, will show a change. We add, let's say we can pick up the Prairie Trail, or we get more Centennial Trail loops or connectivity. We do something, maybe there's a whole, well, I turned it upside down again. I must like the world upside down, sorry.
Can you pull it out a
out.
little bit more, zoom out?
Well, I'll tell you what, can I go to the other one since I think it's easier to see on
Sure.
TV? Yep. Okay. We may see putting in a trail that goes all the way around.
That's it's always the dream that we talked about.
Yeah. It has some development. And I think level 2 does. It's not just purely open space. There are hiking trails. Good English. There could be paved trails. There could be cross-country ski areas and mountain biking that are used back and forth. Maybe down the road we go higher up on the mountain where there's a better snow belt, and we're able to offer those things. So I think the level 2 keeps the trail a formal trail, not a hiking trail, but yeah, I can't even say that. It depends on how much we develop it. If it's a mountain bike and it's a trail that could be hiked on and do the snowshoeing or cross-country skiing or whatever, once again, it goes into a level 2. And maybe that's what we decide is even in part of this, there is some level 2.
Aren't there more rock climbing faces down in there?
Yes.
Okay.
Dave, what's our ratio now on the level 1?
You mean what's our exact number?
Well,
We're close to the 6, it might be like 6.3.
okay.
We'll be, with the development of the sports complex, we'll take a spike in there. But then we're going to have population come and it'll drop back down to about where we're supposed to be. So we go like this on that line. It's never going to be perfect. At some point, that level of service will change, and instead of being a 6 and 10, you'll probably go to an 8 and 8. Sometime when I'm long gone, you may flip it around to a 10 and 6. It's not carved in stone, it's simply a planning tool for 50, 100 years down the road to get us there. So we'll go more in depth on this. I mean, think of terms that you feel comfortable with, how you want to define it, just what makes sense. I've had a chance as I was going through some of the stuff looking at how we've defined level 1 and level 2. And I can tell different times it changed because we'd have a change in Park and Rec commissioners. We'd be going and doing a revision of our impact fees. There could be just change. And we kept adding to stuff, trying to define it more and more. And we'd pull stuff out. So it's not, like I said, it's not carved in stone. It's simply how do we enunciate what our intent is. Okay.
Thank you. Administrative and staff reports, Winterfest wrap-up. Is that you, Tracy? That was a fun evening.
So Winterfest was really fun. Like I had brought up before, we were going to do some major revisions, which we did. We kind of went on a limb, and I think it worked really well. Some of you that were there, I hope you enjoyed it. We had a lot of different staff, and council was there, and we really appreciated that. But like I had said previously, we grossly outgrew being here in the rotunda and using the council chambers. So we kind of looked at it and wanted to see a bigger picture of what we want to see Winterfest going to, and we have some grand ideas for it. But we made a major adjustment this year. So how Winterfest laid out for us, instead of normally, if you hadn't been here, I'll give you the recap real quick, is everything happened in this rotunda or our conference rooms down the hallway. So it was like moving herds of people in different areas. So we decided to go to outside, and we were super fortunate in the fact that the big year we made the transition, we also had a spectacular evening with great weather. But so what we did was we used our plaza to the fullest. So thanks to Brian's staff and the whole parks, they completely, as they always have in the past, they lit this side all around City Hall, and it was beautiful. But so we used the stairs we were lucky enough to have a couple of our school choirs come out. We used that as our risers from them instead of trying to squeeze risers also in the rotunda. So we allowed it to be there and have City Hall as our big backdrop. And then we had our burn barrels out there. We had our Mrs. Claus kitchen, which we provided. We hosted it, but it was thanks to donations. We were able to give out the little graham crackers and the chocolates and the marshmallows, and then they could use our burn barrels to do that. Stacy's Cake and the Purple Onion, a local business here in town, came, and within an hour and a half, she served over 500 cups of soup for free to people. They were super busy on that. And then we had garnered one of Scott's Kettle Corn, which is one of our Post Falls Festival longtime vendors, came out, and he was here to have hot coffee and hot cocoa. We did do cider for free for people, but he was offering that as a service and also as kettle corn, and he had a spectacular night himself. Our camp group set up right kind of in the middle of the pavilion. We had, or middle of the plaza, we had a huge tent that we normally have at our campsite we had brought here, and we did crafts there. And then we were fortunate, thanks to our big sponsor that we had for the evening, which was Idaho Central Credit Union. They had sponsored the money for the cookies and so forth, but they also brought their tent and came out and did a really cute craft that they did. And then we decided, we used to do like 6 or 7 or 8 different crafts, and it was to the point that we kids were doing so many crafts, there wasn't the quality, the time being invested. Parents weren't sitting down working with their kids, they were kind of just moving them from station to station. So what we did is we limited it to 3 what I call quality crafts. I kept telling our camp director, I said, I want a craft that a parent's going to take home and put on their Christmas tree and date it. It's something they're going to want to keep. That's what my tree's about, and I hope a lot of other families do that. So I think we achieved that. Then we also decided to set up games. So we had our life-size Jenga that we brought out here, which was really fun. Then we also found a really cute game that was like polar fishing, and it had like the little penguins and stuff, and the kids, it's kind of like when you go to your kids' carnival and you put your little thing over the shower curtain and a toy gets hooked to it. It was kind of like that, and it allowed our wee little ones that didn't want to spend as much time on the crafts to have something to do for that. Then we did come inside. Well, we had Santa come and made his entrance, which that needs some technical work, because as much as I was so thrilled with our growth, we ended up with about 1,000 people. And so, I mean, that was exciting and overwhelming at the same time. And so Santa came out to the doors, but hardly anyone could see him due to the fact that it's just a mobs of people. So next year, the big plan already is Santa's going to be in a heated tent outside, which Santa would appreciate anyways, because he was a little bit warm inside with the large crowds of people. But so he came out, and then to entertain while Santa then came and sat in the rotunda, which we had decorated as Santa's area, which we allow parents just to take pictures for free to do their own thing. We want to make it as a fun family-free event for them. And then we were fortunate to have Prairie View and Saltese came and had their bell choir, which we did inside here. They did at the tables just so there was some background entertainment for when Santa was here and stuff. So it ended up, like I told Dave and our crew, and I feel so proud, our department between Parks and Recreation, everybody worked super hard on it, and it was a fantastic evening, and I'm not trying to take anything away from that. But I do see changes. We still need some modifications and some changes, and I was telling Dave, I said, I feel bad. I mean, we're all so proud and so excited, and I feel bad. And Dave goes, that's what recreation people do, Tracy. You should know that. You're always wanting to change and improve. So we have some things that we want to work on, but overall, I couldn't have been more thrilled. I think the weather was a blessing. The weather definitely, I think, for that. But we had a really great evening, and the community seemed to have a really good time, and that, of course, is our most important thing. And then we also have our giving tree, which we have out through the month. We have our tree out for canned goods or blankets or toys or backpacks. And so right a week prior to Christmas, I was able to take that to the food bank and make a donation on behalf of our community. So all in all, I think we had a really successful, good time. Any questions?
Just a comment.
Yes.
So the chamber had a function going on that ended right
Yes.
when you were started, and that was
Yes.
great to go over. But the whole evening, I just kept hearing parents going, these s'mores and these barrels are awesome. I mean, they just love them. So that was just such a nice addition to put out more that you did, and it was fun.
We just constantly, and last year, unfortunately, I was really sick, and our staff had to pitch in for it. But we started wanting. I kept saying my dream is to have like s'mores, and so we kind of did just the little tiny like portable things. But this year, Brian's crew, it was funny. Derek actually and Brian's crew, I was like, I really want like burn bows. He's like, we will have them, and he did make it happen. So that was awesome. Yeah.
Very fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. Jeez, 1,000 people?
Equipment plan update.
Oh, good. I need a password for the computer. It shut down. Until they get up here, we can go this way, maybe. All right. So we wanted to take a chance or an opportunity to just give you an update of what we've been doing over the last couple of years to address our wouldn't want to say backlog, but just the current state of our equipment infrastructure and how we're managing the rolling stock and the equipment that maintains the parks. Because we know that it's necessary to have that equipment to be able to continue to provide this level of service to our community, we wanted to stay ahead of that and provide a proactive approach to managing that infrastructure so that we could ensure that it's getting replaced in a timely manner so that we aren't getting a lot of downtime that is causing staff inefficiencies and that sort of thing. So one of the early things that became apparent is we had a really good system in place as a city to addressing the vehicle situation. So the typical passenger vehicles and trucks that are associated with moving stuff from site to site and throughout the park system. And what we were missing is how we were going to manage the equipment that the parks itself uses, our tractors, our big mowers, all the way down to the equipment that we use to stripe soccer fields and that sort of thing. So with that in mind, we worked to outline a plan that would give us the ability to manage that infrastructure. And what we looked at first is what were the resources that we were trying to look to manage. The 21 vehicles, those are those items that are typically handled through our fleet replacement program that's been established for quite some time and is generally working quite well for the city. There's a number of different thresholds that the fleet division looks at to determine when those vehicles need to be replaced based on age, work orders that are coming in, and the number of dollars that are being spent on that individual unit, and whether or not, basically when it exceeds the original purchase price of the vehicle is kind of that bubble. If you've spent as much money on maintenance as you have on the initial purchase, it's about due for replacement. And then downtime is one of those other factors. If we have equipment that's getting so old that it's really hard to find replacement parts, those are then those items that we start to look to move forward. So the plan that I'm going to provide an update on are for these lower items: our mowers, utility vehicles, our heavy equipment, our trailers, and our specialty equipment. Those are the items that just didn't fall within that existing fleet maintenance program. We didn't want to address those tools that are kind of transitory and can really be just replaced within our regular workflow as they become obsolete or become worn. So we didn't put in the weed eaters and backpack blowers and those sorts of tools that are under $1,000. We're looking more on those items that are over $1,000, and we anticipate are going to be around for more than 3 years. If it's going to be around for less than that, then we're going to handle that in some other operation capacity. And then once again, as I described, things that fell outside of that existing fleet replacement fund. So we came up with a plan that addressed for a 5-year window, 5-year planning window of what we were going to look to replace. And some of these items have a 20 or 25-year life expectancy. Some of them are 12, some of them are 5, some of them are 3. The sample that I'm showing you here, this is snapshot 1. This was year 1 of this plan being in place. And the replacement equipment that we addressed, we had to vary just slightly. So if you look through the plan that was provided in your packet as compared to the equipment plan that's being represented on the screen right now, you'll see that there's a compact tractor that was replaced last year. And that was because we had some critical issues with that tractor, and we knew we had this new development coming online with the park at Tullamore. We thought we were going to be starting that in July, and we didn't want to take a tractor that was showing some severe wear into that project. So we moved that one ahead and moved the wide area mower that was originally slated for last year's replacement schedule to this current year. So we have a little flexibility within this plan as long as the math ends up working out, and that's what you're seeing on the screen here. So we replaced that compact tractor, an equipment trailer that was necessary because we had a new tractor that was then heavier, and we needed the tools to be able to transport between facilities. Field striping equipment, so that equipment that keeps our soccer fields in good shape, and intermediate mower, zero-turn mower, and a utility vehicle. And I wanted to highlight that utility vehicle because of the changes that we've made within our snow program this last year. And we leveraged this plan to replace an old utility vehicle that had been transferred from State Parks and Rec when they surplused it because it was too old and costing them too much money to run. That was our only plow vehicle we had when I first came to the city 7 years ago. And we've, over this period of time, realized that we need to tool up and start to meet what our citizens are asking for. And as a result, we've had at least 6 emails and or phone calls this last year thanking our department for the efforts that they've been making towards managing our multi-use trails in specific. Centennial Trail, we plow that from end to end from State Line out to where Coeur d'Alene meets us over near Hutter Road. This year we added our multi-use trails around some of our neighborhood parks, Syringa, Beck, Meadows, and we also added the multi-use paths along Black Bay. And the Beck and Meadows and Black Bay, each of those have received multiple calls thanking us for adding those facilities. Beck and Meadows in specific because it was something that the kids were using those pathways to get to their bus stops. And we didn't know that because we're not out there early in the morning when the kids are trying to get to school. And we had a request last summer. Is this something that you can address? Fortunately, we were able to make these upgrades to the equipment along with this plan, and we were able to then meet that need. So the other unit that has helped with that is this additional purchase of a Bobcat Toolcat. This is the new piece of equipment we added to our fleet this last year. The purchase ended up coming in just after our budget year ended in October, or started in October, so it actually was a fiscal year 18 purchase, just based on how long it took to get from the factory. That unit, we have a snowblower, high flow, hydraulic driven snowblower on the front of that unit. Generally, it looks like a utility vehicle. It has 4 wheels and looks like a golf cart, but it has the same capacities as this tractor as far as power takeoff and high flow, low flow hydraulics. It has a regular loader bucket on the front. Just doesn't lift as high as our big tractor does. So that tool will be something that we can leverage for summer construction of parks. It will run our trencher for providing new irrigation lines. It came with a broom, so we can sweep through parking lots and sweep roadways and that sort of thing, both for construction and just general maintenance of the parks. Once again, that was last year. So our current year, and we've already made a few of these purchases. We have another utility vehicle on the horizon. Our wide area mower that I described, we shuffled around. We were able to make that purchase, and that is sitting in the shop ready to go for the spring. And this was one that we worked really closely with our fleet division to identify ways that we could hopefully prolong the life and reduce the overall maintenance costs. And prior, we had been running a Hustler wide area mower, 12-foot mower, covers a lot of ground, but it was really, really difficult to find parts. It was becoming cumbersome for us to get that unit back online when it did break down, and often it would go down for over 3 weeks at a time. And when you have a resource that is valued between $60,000 and $80,000, and you're seeing 3 or 4 weeks of downtime every time you break a hydraulic motor or something of that nature, I start to wonder if that's the best place to be putting those resources. So we moved towards this Toro contour mower that each one of these individual decks has a hydraulic driven motor to it. So we can buy one of these motors and it'll cover for all 5 of these decks. Yes, sir.
How many mowers, Brian?
We have 2 wide area mowers within our system.
How many mowers on that piece of equipment?
On this deck, so there are 3 up front, and then there are 2 more that sit down behind it.
So they don't have a space between?
There's no space between, correct. Yep, so it'll have a nice even cut. And this allows a lot of flexibility between the decks because they're all free floating, where the Hustler had 3 blades on one individual deck and then they overlapped. So you saw larger wings coming off the side than what you're seeing with this one. But it generally, roughly the same width. This is just shy of 11 feet and the Hustler was a 12-foot mower. So we'll have a little less ground covered, a higher quality of cut, which I'd say our community is starting to demand, particularly in the sports field areas. It's become an expectation in our region to have tighter mown turf within baseball and soccer fields than what we had 10 or 15 years ago when that Hustler mower was originally purchased. Which is also an important point to make, that piece of equipment that was going down for 3 weeks at a time was purchased in the early 2000s. So it did serve its life, and it was well taken care of and exceeded what I would estimate being an economic useful life. So staff did a great job over the years ensuring that they got the life out of it, and hopefully we can continue in that trend. So little sample of what we had online, and then our one new purchase for this year is a forestry bucket truck. So previously we worked with streets to utilize a bucket truck that's used for signs and signals, for replacing lamps on our street lights and that sort of thing around town. And every time we'd go out to do that work, we'd have to have a driver in that vehicle and then a trail vehicle that would handle our chip box and or pull our chipper so that we could do street tree maintenance or park tree maintenance. And there's the inefficiencies of that by having 2 drivers to get the same project done and taking up a lot of room on the side of a road, where this new system will allow 1 driver and the crew to go out and do that work. But the biggest efficiency we're going to find there is the tools will be ready for that crew to go to work on a daily basis. We weren't going to have to be shifting things back and around. We'll have a dedicated unit that's set up for accomplishing pruning work on a regular basis. So with that, answer any questions or any comments on
Brian, how do you handle the service?
service?
All equipment.
It's a little bit of a shared responsibility. We have a fleet division that is their responsibility to manage the facilities. Some of those items we're better handled and better tooled to manage the fleet itself. They're not going to come out and change blades for us, and they're not going to come out and do the regular daily maintenance and greasing of the vehicles. So we handle those day-to-day maintenance items. Some of the fine-tuning and ensuring that the units are ready and prepared for the quality, those often end up on us versus them. But when we have something major like a frame that gets twisted or a motor that needs to be replaced, or even like those hydraulic motors that I was describing on the front of a mower, when those go down, those sorts of things are generally handled by the fleet department. Lots of communication back and forth between our crews, our supervisors, and this fleet group.
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've come a long ways with equipment.
I know,
From
that's
an old
exactly
beat-up
what I was thinking.
oval to this.
I guess what I'd like to add is, what you saw there was a lot of work by Brian getting the stats and information so we could get it to council and get it, the plan adopted. And it has made a big difference in the budgeting process. The issue on having equipment that's multi-use, we've known for a long time that snow removal in the parks and around the facilities we're responsible for is a high priority. The problem is we only had a couple snow blowers that were walk behind to do it, or hand shovels. Not real efficient. Black Bay Park, when you first got the snow blower, it was done in
Was that hour and 15 minutes? The day that it had rained on top of 8 inches of snow? That really, really heavy snow that
It
we
was-
experienced?
it was a slush coming out, but they got it done that quick. I guarantee if we had been able to even do it with the equipment we had, they would have been out there for days. Makes a huge difference.
Huge difference.
And it's not as hard on the bodies.
Yep.
You know, anybody who's gone out and broken ice and shoveled lots of snow by hand and stuff, that's hard work. And that's what our crews were being forced to do. So, it's a big plus for the program.
That's great. I think over the years, I've seen torches with you guys out there to melt down what you could to break it up. So, any other questions? Commission comments?
I have a question. I should have brought it up under old business. We were doing a tree inventory due to insurance and the windstorm that we had had. How is that coming along?
The inventory is being updated as, I guess we didn't mention it, but we have a new arborist who just started
Right.
this week to help Preston. Nina did retire, so we revamped that whole position. We got with the budget, another arborist. So they're going to actually be able to start going out and getting some more of that. They've been doing a little bit, but
Catch back up.
we've got a lot of catching up to do. The one thing with our urban forester, probably half of the time of Preston's time is spent doing plan reviews, doing site inspections on all the growth. So when we have this spurt in growth, it impacts us heavily. We do have to look at the plan applications that are coming in for all commercial. In his case, he also has to look at some of the subdivision plans. So we've had to put things to the side to be able to handle that growth. So,
Understand. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Good job.
Thanks. Well, then, I adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.